Distinguished senators, please can we take our seat so that we can start the business of the day. Distinguished senators, please. Mr. President, whenever you are set, the chamber is ready. You give him, he has the authority finally. Huh?
Votes and proceedings. Page 903. Page 904. Page 905. Page 906. Page 907. Page 908. Page 909. Page 910. Page 911. Senator Jika, please move for the adoption of the votes and proceedings.
Thank you, Mr. President. Distinguished senators, Jika, representing Bauchi Central Senatorial Zone, I rise humbly to move that the Senate do adopt and approve the vote on proceedings of Wednesday, 5th February 2020. I so do.
Distinguished Senator Christopher Epel.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, my name is Senator Christopher Stephen Ekpenyang, representing the people of Akwa Ibom Northwest. I rise to second the motion ably moved by my colleague on the adoption of the votes and proceedings of Wednesday, 5th February 2020. I so move.
Distinguished colleagues, those in favor of the motion that the votes and proceedings of Wednesday, 5th February 2020 be approved, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. The votes and proceedings of Wednesday, 5th February 2020 is hereby approved. Notice of meeting postponement. Your Excellency, this is to inform members of the Ad hoc Committee on Nigerian Security Challenges, urgent need to restructure, review, and reorganize the current security architecture, that the earlier scheduled meeting of the Ad hoc Committee slated to start today, 6 February 2020 by 12 noon prompt at the NAV Conference Center have been postponed to Monday, 10th to Friday, 15th February 2020 at the same venue and time. This is to make way for the event of the Nigerian Air Force helicopter at the Eagle Square today. The Minister of Defense and service chiefs, among other selected stakeholders invited by the Ad hoc Committee, are expected to attend the ceremony. Any inconvenience is highly regretted. Please accept the assurances of the committee's highest consideration. Signed, Distinguished Senator Yahya A. Abdullahi, PhD, OON, Chairman. Distinguished colleagues, the Senate Constitution Review Committee for this session, the 9th session, membership is ready, and the membership is as follows. Senator Ove Omo Agege, the Deputy President of the Senate, Chairman. Senator Abdullahi Yahya, Senate Leader, Member. Senator Robert Ajayi Borofes, Deputy Senate Leader, Member. Senator Sabi Ali Abdullahi, Senate Deputy Chief Whip, Member. Senator Ehiana Abaribe, Senate Minority Leader, Member. Senator Emmanuel Boacha, Senate Deputy Minority Leader, Member. Senator Philip Tanimu Aduda, Senate Minority Chief Whip, Senate Minority Whip, Member. Senator Sabi Ali Alhaji, Senator Sahabi Alhaji Ya'u, Senate Deputy Minority Whip, Member. These are principal officers who also constitute the steering committee, but they are also members of the main committee. Each state is represented by one senator. And Abia State, Senator Theodore Oji, member. Senator Aisha Dahiru Ahmed, Adamawa State, member. Senator Stella A. Odua, Anambra, member. Senator Albert Basi Akpan, Akwa Ibom. Senator Halluru Dauda Jika, Bauchi. Senator Deji Biyo Barakuma, Bayelsa. Senator Gabriel T. Suswam, Benue. Senator Abubakar Kyari, Borno. Senator Gershom Basi, Cross River. Senator James Obio, Manager, Delta. Senator Samuel Egu, Ebonyi State. Senator Matthew Rogide, Edo State. Senator Michael Opeyemi Bamidele, Ekiti State. Senator Ike Ekwaremadu, Enugu State. Senator Mohammed Danjuma Gwoje, Gombe State. Senator Anna Rochas Okorocha, Imo State. Senator Sabo Mohammed Nakudu, Jigawa State. Senator Obasani, Kaduna State. Senator Kabir Gaya, Kano State. Senator Ahmad Babakaita, Katsina State. Senator Muhammad Adamu Alero, Kebbi State. Senator Smart Adeyemi, Kogi State. Senator Sadiq Suleiman Umar, Kwara State. Senator Olurimi S. Tinubu, Lagos State. Senator Abdullahi Adamu, Nasarawa State. Senator Mohammed Sani Musa, Niger State. Senator Abikule Amosun, Ogun State. Senator Nicholas Tofomo, Ondo State. Senator Surajuddin Ajibola Basiru, Osun State. Senator Taslim Folarin, Oyo State. Senator Hezekiah Dimka, Plateau State. Senator George Thompson Sekibo, River State. Senator Ali Umagataka Dawamoko, Sokoto State. Senator Yusuf A. Yusuf, Taraba State. Senator Ibrahim Alaji Gaidam, Yobe State. Senator Hassan Mohammed Gusau, Zamfara State. In addition, we have zonal representation, and each zone is represented by 2 distinguished senators. Northwest, you have Senator Bala Ibn Na'Allah and Senator Ibrahim Shekarau. Northeast, Senator Kashim Shatima and Senator Lawal Yahya Gumo. North Central, Senator Umar Tanko Al-Makura and Senator Yakubu Aseni. Southwest, Senator Abdul Fattah Buhari and Senator Biodun Olujuni. Southeast, Senator Uche Lilian Ekwenefe and Senator Chukwuka Utazi. South-South, Senator Ekon Eyekenyi and Senator Ross Okoji Oko. This is the list of the membership of the steering committee as well as the Constitution Review Committee, the main committee. I want to take this opportunity to advise the committee that you represent the entire Senate and indeed the National Assembly, even though the House will also constitute its own Constitutional Review Committee. But of course, the single senators who are not members can still participate by way of giving any submissions and any advice they feel strongly about for this committee to succeed. As for the activities of the committee, you will engage not only members of the National Assembly and other statutory bodies like INEC, civil society groups, but Nigerians are interested in the way and manner we do our activities here. Nigerians definitely have interest in the constitutional review that the National Assembly will back upon. There are several issues that Nigerians feel very strongly about. The Constitutional Review Committee is supposed to be a platform where such issues could be brought and where those who are interested should ensure that they make every possible effort, including presentations, for their views to be considered. We as a National Assembly, particularly the Senate, we want to have a very stable country. We want to have a country that gives every citizen the opportunity to actualize his or her dream. We want to have a security that is enhanced and an economy that works for everyone. Stability of the polity is important. We have to have a country before we run for elections or indeed undertake any activity. So we advise that any organization or individual who has anything that he or she feels should be taken on by this Constitutional Review Committee should submit to the Constitutional Review Committee. We pray for the Almighty God to guide you through this very important assignment that you have to do on our behalf. Thank you very much. Point of order, Senator Ifeanyi Uba.
Order 43, personal explanation, please. Mr. President, we have 3 political parties in the Senate: APC, PDP, and YPP. There is no mention of my political party in the Constitutional Review, and I think it's maybe an oversight. Please, Mr. President, I think you should consider my party, because we are here on our own, and I'm a caucus of my own party.
Okay, please take your seat. Because you have come under Order 43, personal explanation, this is for our information. The membership is not strictly based on political parties. You recall that at the beginning I said each state is going to be represented by 1 senator, and then each geopolitical zone would have zonal representation. So it's not based on political parties, but your point of order is well taken. This is part of what we are trying to do in the Constitutional Review. So I will take note of this, and I'm sure the Constitutional Review Committee chairman and his members will also take note. But don't despair. You YPP, you have either this opportunity or another one. So this is our Senate, including the YPP. Thank you. Petitions?
Yep.
There are petitions, Senator Chukwuka Utazi.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm Senator Chukwuka Utazi. I represent the good people of Enugu North and South District of Enugu State. Mr. President, I have a petition from the former Nigerian Coal Miners Union. Mr. President, the former staff of the Nigerian Coal Corporation were at a certain stage in their work, since coal is not working for the economy now. We are giving letters of termination of appointment that they are no longer staff, and then the issue of how to pay their salaries and outstandings so that they can go. We are not paid. On top of that, the Ministry of Solid Minerals and the Bureau of Public Enterprises handled the issue and decided that since they couldn't pay their money, they will think of monetization of their accommodations as a way of sorting them out financially. Halfway, several governments came on board, and what these people are now suffering, that the same Ministry of Solid Mineral and Bureau of Public Enterprises have decided to sell their houses to other people to come over and take their properties in Enugu. And these people approached me. There are over the number of these people affected, 167 of them that the Bureau of Public Enterprises have decided to sell their houses to other people where they are still living there, and they haven't even paid them their arrears of their salaries owed them. And they approached me to approach that I get this petition on their behalf before the Senate, so that they look into this issue and treat them with respect. These are Nigerians. They have worked for this country. In 1959, the GDP of this country by coal corporation was 1.57 million pounds. And they contributed immensely. They cannot at this point of time be just thrown away that way in a country where they belong. Mr. President, with your kind permission, I want to lay this petition, and I also want to tell you that they have not approached any court of law for purpose of handling this matter. They want the Senate of the Federal Republic to handle their matter and then give them justice they deserve.
They are not seeking judicial remedy. You can lay the petition, please. The petition is hereby referred to the Senate Committee on Ethics, Privileges, and Public Petitions to report back in 2 weeks. Any other petition? Petition, Senator Abba Moro Patrick.
Actually, I thought we are done with petitions. I wanted to raise a point of order, Mr. President.
I asked for petitions, not point of order. Thank you.
Senate Leader, point of order, Senator Manager. Mr. President, my highly respected colleague James Ebiowo, Manager CON is my name. And I represent, wait first now, wait. I represent Delta South. Mr. President, before I go to the order, I want to observe something. It's good to see you there. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Leader of the Senate. Senate Leader.
Mr. President, my highly respected and distinguished colleague.
Senator Moro.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Abba Moro, representing the very good people of the Benue South Senatorial District. Mr. President, I want to come under Order 42, matter of urgent public importance, and 52. Mr. President, in recent times, there has been an outbreak of a strange epidemic in...
You may read the order, please.
matter of urgent public importance. And I read, the matter for discussion shall, if possible, be referred to the President of the Senate before commencement of the day's sitting, and the President of the Senate shall refuse to allow the claim unless he is satisfied that the matter is definite and urgent. If the claim is allowed by the President of the Senate and the leave of the Senate is given by at least 1/5 of all the senators, the matter shall stand over till the next legislative day. Order 52. Order 52, dispensing with notice. Notice shall not be dispensed with in the course of a motion or in respect of any other proceeding for which notice is required, except with the consent of the President of the Senate and the general consent of the senators present. Mr. President, if you allow...
The synopsis, please. The synopsis. Give us the gist of the order you seek.
January 2020, there was an outbreak of epidemic in a border town in 2 local governments in my constituency, Obi local government and Oju local government. And Mr. President, as a result of that, several persons have died and several persons are affected, and yet we've not been able to find a diagnosis for the strange disease.
Thank you, Senator Moro. Ordinarily, you ought to have brought it to the attention of Mr. President. I'm not so sure you did this with Senate President, but for sure you didn't bring this up to my attention. But be that as it may, I have no problem with that. But we seek leave of the membership for at least 1/5 of membership before you can proceed. Is it the wish? Those in favor say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. You may proceed.
Mr. President, I read the motion. Urgent need to deal with a strange epidemic outbreak ravaging Obi local government area of Benue State, sponsored by my humble self. Mr. President, the Senate notes with grave pain that on Wednesday, January 29, 2020, there was an epidemic outbreak in Oye Obi, claiming at least 15 lives in the community. The first victims are Happiness Ogbu, Ona Ogbedu, Wesin Agwo, Andy Edu, who were hit by the disease and all died alike within 48 hours of contacting the undiagnosed disease. Further note that the strange disease has not been yet diagnosed by health authorities and medical experts. Saddened that victims who have died from the disease developed the same symptoms of headache, internal heat, diarrhea, vomiting, stomach ache, weakness of the body, swollen stomach, and died in the same manner. More saddened that as at Monday, 3rd February 2020, the number of persons affected with the strange epidemic has risen to 104. Accordingly, resolves: 1. Urge the Federal Ministry of Health to mobilize focal persons to the area to investigate and ascertain the nature of the disease. 2. Urge the Center for Disease Control to promptly put up surveillance to contain the disease and see to the treatment of victims and protect others from contracting same disease. And 3. Further urges the federal government, Federal Ministry of Health, to conduct mass mobilization and awareness campaign on how to prevent the spread of the disease. And finally, Mr. President, urge the Federal Ministry of Health to provide temporary succor for those already affected and prevent others from further contracting the disease. I so move, Mr. President.
Any seconder?
Mr. President,
Senator Elisha Cliff Ishaku, you may second the motion.
Mr. President, my name is Senator Ishaku Abo. I represent the people of Adamawa North in the body of the Nigerian Senate. I rise to second the motion ably moved by distinguished Senator Abba Moro. I second.
Senator Ulurebe.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, my name is Ibrahim Oloriegbe. I represent Kwara Central Senatorial District. I rise to support the motion as moved by my colleagues and my co-comrade, Comrade Abba Moro. I want to start, Mr. President, by sympathizing with the people of the local government affected. However, listening to the motion, while I'm supporting it, I didn't hear what the effort of the state government of Benue has been, because the primary responsibility, health is on concurrent list, and all level of government do have responsibility, especially when there's emergency like this. Though in this motion also it says it's a strange disease, but based on experience, it's most likely to be a gastrointestinal ailment. What we mean by that is that something that deals with most likely foodborne. That is something that's taken to the mouth, because it says vomiting, diarrhea, and I guess may most likely be cholera or a kind of infection that is derived from food. Having said that, Mr. President, while he is calling on the Federal Ministry of Health to intervene, I want to say that we will have wished to know what the effort of the state government and the state epidemiological department has been. We are very close to the people and who are supposed to take action. But be that as since it has come before us, and the primary responsibility of government or the government of Nigeria is to ensure that every Nigeria, wherever they are, have good health and they are safe. I will support what he has said, but in addition to that, I think we need to also urge the state government of Benue to also take actions and work in collaboration. I'm very much aware the state has a epidemiological unit, they have a public health department who ought to have immediately moved into this area and start to do something. So in view of this, Mr. President, I support the motion so that the people that are affected are cared for. Thank you very much.
This is a very, very straightforward motion, so we'll go through the prayers. Prayer 1. Urge the Federal Ministry of Health to mobilize focal persons to the area to investigate and ascertain the nature of the disease. Those in favor of this prayer say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Prayer 2. Urge the Center for Disease Control to promptly put up surveillance to contain the disease and see to the treatment of the victims and protect others from contacting it. Those in favor say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Prayer 3. Further urge the Federal Ministry of Health to conduct mass mobilization and awareness campaign on how to prevent the spread of the disease. Those in favor say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Prayer 4. Further urges the Federal Ministry of Health to provide succor for those affected. Those in favor say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Senate Leader.
Mr. President.
Point of order, Senator Uba.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to raise Group Order 43, an issue of urgent national importance. Order 43.
Did you say order 43? You may read.
Oh. by the indulgence of the Senate and the leave of the President of the Senate, a senator may make a personal explanation, although there may be no question before the Senate, but no controversial matter may be brought forward, nor may debate arise upon the explanation. The terms of the proposed statement shall be submitted in detail to the President of the Senate when his leave to make it is sought.
Thank you very much. Indeed, you approached us this morning at the leadership meeting, and this is brought to our attention. You may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mefa Anyuba, Anambra South Senatorial District. Mr. President, I want to lay information on the urgent need for the federal government of Nigeria to take proactive measures to forestall an imminent scarcity of surgical face masks in Nigeria as a result of the coronavirus outbreak, and the urgent need to checkmate the unpatriotic profiteering and illegal exportation of face masks to Asia and other affected countries. This is what I'm talking about. Should I put it on? Okay. Mr. President, Senate worried that over the last 3 weeks, face masks have become the most sought-after commodity in Nigeria, with over 100 million face masks being unpatriotically exported to Asia using Murtala Mohammed Airport and Port Harcourt International Airport. Also worried that the exportation of these face masks have led to a surge in the market price. As at 5th of November 2019, stores that usually sell one piece of face mask for 10 naira now sells it for 18 naira. While a pack consisting of 50 pieces has now inflated from 500 to 3,000 naira. And a carton consisting of 40 packs also inflating from 20,000 to 120,000. Concerned that the major retailers and suppliers in Asia have been preserving their face masks and reporting surgical mask shortage as a result of the outbreak. And while Nigeria has continued to export imported face masks available in the stores, in the shop and stores to Asia and other affected countries. Further concerned that it has now become a booming trade for illicit traders aided by airport officials in Murtala Mohammed Airport and Port Harcourt International Airport to unpatriotically export face masks to China, India, and other affected countries. Note with distress that Nigeria may soon be facing a shortage of protective surgical face masks if nothing is done to checkmate this unpatriotic exportation or promote indigenous production of the face mask. Worried that Nigeria is at the brink of an imminent outbreak, given our massive population and frequency of travel, and with the booming shortage of protective surgical face masks, we may be on our way to creating a devastating global situation. Despite that Nigerians are not adequately advised and informed of the disastrous modalities and health consequences this deadly virus presents, which could be further mitigated by the impending shortage of protective face masks. Further disturbed by the distress call from a Chinese friend who confidentially and reliably informed me of the fact that Chinese companies have sent their agents to search for medical face masks in Nigeria and other African countries. He lamented how India and other countries are mass producing the face masks in order to curb the deadly trend in their own countries. Note with concern the spread of this deadly coronavirus, which originated from China and has currently spread to at least 28 countries globally, with suspected cases of the deadly virus in African countries. And also note that the World Health Organization has recorded 565 deaths with 28,276 cases of infected persons. Senate note that if proactive measures are not taken to checkmate our borders, an immediate outbreak might occur in the same manner which an infected career immigrant from Liberia transferred the Ebola disease in Nigeria in 2014. It is an information, but it will have been nice if the Senate can mandate Nigerian Police Force, Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority, Federal Ministry of Health, Nigerian Immigration Services, and other relevant government authorities to strengthen port health regulatory services in all entry ports across the country to checkmate the outbreak of the virus in Nigeria. Mandate the Nigerian Customs to enforce stringent measures to curb the ongoing unpatriotic exportation of surgical face masks from Nigeria to China, while working on how best to encourage local production of this essential commodity, like surgical face mask. Impose strict penalties and heavy fines on anybody trying to export surgical face mask within the period of the coronavirus outbreak. Mandate the Federal Ministry of Health and other relevant agencies to launch a sensitization and awareness campaign to enhance effort in preventing an outbreak of such in Nigeria. And if possible, invite the Honorable Minister of Health to brief the Senate on the preparedness of his ministry towards taking precautionary measures to stem the tide of this virus. Thank you for the information, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Yoruba. You realize you came under Order 43. What that means is that this is not subject to debate. The Federal Ministry of Health has already taken note of this, and I further implore the Committee on Health to follow up. Thank you very much. Senate Leader.
Mr. President, my highly respected and distinguished colleagues, the first business of the day is the presentation of a bill standing in the name of distinguished Senator Uche Lilian Okonufe on the National Biosafety Management Act 2015 Amendment Bill 2020. Mr. President, you may wish to invite the Clerk of the Senate to read the short title of the bill.
Clerk of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, National Biosafety Management Act 2015, Amendment Bills 2020, SB 302, first reading. Your mic.
National Biosafety Management Act 2015 Amendment Bill 2020 SB 302, first reading taken. Senate Leader.
Mr. President, my highly respected and distinguished colleagues, the second business of the day is the presentation of a bill standing in the name of distinguished Senator Opeyemi Bamidele on the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria 1999 Alteration Bill 2020. Mr. President, you may wish to invite the Clerk of the Senate to read the short title of the bill.
Clerk of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria 1999, Alteration Bill 2020, SB 306, first reading.
Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria 1999, Alteration Bill 2020, SB 306, first reading taken. Senate Leader.
Mr. President, my highly respected and distinguished colleagues, the third business of the day is the presentation of a bill standing in the name of distinguished Senator Said Ahmed Al-Kali on the Federal College of Forestry, Wawazenge, Duku, Gombe State, establishing a structural bill 2020. Mr. President, we wish to invite the Clerk of the Senate to read the short title of the bill.
Clerk of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, Federal College of Forestry, Wawazange Duku, Gombe State, Establishment etc. Bill 2020, SB 308, first reading.
Federal College of Forestry, Wawazange Duku, Gombe State, Establishment ETC Bill 2020, SB 308, first reading taken. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, my highly respected and distinguished colleagues, the fourth business of the day is the presentation of a bill standing in the name of distinguished Senator Lawrence Yora Jakpo on Community Health Practitioners Registration Structure Act, Cap C-19 Laws of the Federation of Nigeria, 2004 Amendment Bill 2020. Mr. President, you may wish to invite the clerk of the Senate to read the short title of the bill.
Clerk of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, Community Health Practitioners Registration etc. Act, Cap C-19, LFN 2004, Amendment Bill 2020, SB 309, first reading.
Community Health Practitioners Registration ETC Act, Cap C-19, Laws of the Federation of Nigeria 2004, Amendment Bill 2020, SB 309, first reading taken. Leader of the Senate.
Thank you, Mr. President. My highly respected and distinguished colleagues, the fifth business of the day is the presentation of a bill in the name of distinguished Senator Binos Daudayaro on the Federal College of Forestry, Tongo, Adamawa State, Establishment Structure Bill 2020. Mr. President, you may wish to invite the clerk of the Senate to read the short title of the bill.
Clerk of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, Federal College of Forestry, Tongo, Adamawa State, Establishment etc. Bill 2020, SB 310, first reading.
Federal College of Forestry, Tongo, Adamawa State, Establishment ETC Bill 2020, SB 310, first reading taken. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, my highly respected and distinguished colleagues, the sixth business of the day is the presentation of a bill standing in the name of distinguished Senator Mohammed Sani Musa on the Nigerian Railway Corporation Act N129, Laws of the Federation of Nigeria 2004, Repeal and Re-Enactment Bill 2020. Mr. President, you may wish to invite the clerk of the Senate to read the short title of the bill.
Clerk of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, Nigerian Railway Corporation Act N129, LFN 2004, Repeal and Reenactment Bill 2020, SB 311, first reading.
Nigerian Railway Corporation Act N129, LFN 2004, Repeal and Reenactment Bill 2020, SB 311, first reading taken. Senate Leader.
Mr. President, the first order of the day are second readings of various bills that have received the first reading in this Senate. For the purpose of allowing one of our colleagues who has an urgent flight out of Abuja, I would like to invoke Order 44, which allows me to change the order of presentation. With the support of Mr. Chairman and the support of my colleagues, I move that I am allowed to use Order 44 in order to bring the second reading by James Manager to start off the second reading processes. Order 44, if you want, I will read it. It gives the leader of the Senate the power to rearrange the order of presentation. And the order is under 44.2. The orders of the day shall have precedence over each other according to the order of the day in which they appear in the order paper. An order of the board may be postponed on a motion without notice moved by the senator in charge thereof, which is the leader of the Senate. So with this, Mr. President, I would like to start the first order of the day by requesting the Senate President to invite distinguished Senator
Senator, please.
Chance to Senator Manager to take the first slot in the presentation. So
you may proceed.
Second.
Minority Leader, please second.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I rise to second the motion ably moved by the Senate leader that the powers conferred on him by our rule book should be utilized appropriately and properly. I so second.
Those in favor of the motion say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Senate Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, my very attentive, distinguished colleagues. I therefore move the first order of the day in the second reading of the Nigerian Maritime University Okerenkoko Establishment Bill 2020. The distinguished senators will recall that the bill was read the first time in this chamber on 17th December 2019. Mr. President, you may wish to invite Senator James Manager to move the motion for the bill to be read the second time.
Senator James Manager, please.
Thank you, Mr. President, my respected colleagues. James Manager, Delta South. Mr. President, I rise to move that please allow me to go through the second reading of this particular bill, Mr. President.
You may proceed, Senator Manager.
My highly respected colleagues, this bill is a well-known bill, and the bill passed through this Senate, also passed through the House of Representatives, and the bill was presented to the President for assent. And then the President raised a few observations as to funding. Unfortunately, this bill, unlike what we did to bills of similar nature towards the end of the last Senate, this bill was not was omitted. And because this is a new Senate, it has to go through this full scale, and that's the reason why this bill is represented. Mr. President, I beg to submit that every senator must have gotten copies of the lead debate, and luckily, Mr. President, who is presiding today, is also very much aware of this particular bill and the journey of the bill itself. And then the then chairman of the committee from Kano State, who is now chairman of the Senate Committee of the Almighty Appropriation Committee in the Senate, was the chairman of the committee at the time. And he is very much aware of the journey of this particular bill. So, Mr. President, I want to take it that with the indulgence of the Senate, I want to say this bill, since you all have copies of this bill, please take it as read because of the journey of the bill. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Sabi. You may wish second.
Thank you, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues. Aliu Sabi Abdullahi. I represent the very good people of Niger North. And like the mover of the motion said, first I would like to second that this bill be read the second time. And as the mover of the motion said, this was considered in the 8th Senate. It's a bill. The sponsor of the bill, like he said, this bill actually went through the whole bill process during the 8th Senate. And of course, because action was not taken due to one or two issues, it is customary that it be presented to go through the bill process. As it is, the idea of Federal University of Federal Maritime University for Nigeria, I think is something that is long overdue. And because the subject is not controversial, I think I would like to urge that my colleague just approve when the presiding officer posed the question, so that we can proceed to other bills that perhaps might require more robust debate. So with this, I second that this bill be read the second time, and I urge my colleagues to also support the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Akban Abarbasi.
Thank you, Mr. President. My distinguished resident colleagues, Senator Albert Bassi, Akwa Ibom Northeast. Mr. President, like our leader, the sponsor of the bill, had actually stated in his lead debates, it's a bill that is very familiar to us as a people. And then I have no objection but to support and to request that the bill be read the second time so that we can move forward. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Barajibrin.
Well, Mr. President, I'm Senator Barajibrin, representing Kano North. Mr. President, I had wanted, if I had given the chance to speak, then, I would have, I would have said there's no need for long debate on this bill because everybody knows about this bill. It was passed. It went through all the process. I was chairing the committee then, I said, by the sponsor of the bill. And there was a little problem in the funding aspect of it. And so the president said it should be corrected. That is simple. And this university is in existence. It's up and running, and we know we know the importance of this university in this country. So please, let's just pass it so that we do what the president wants, because that has been captured here, so that it can be assented to by Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. President.
Please, Minority Whip.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, the sponsor of this bill has said it all. We all know the journey of this bill. Even by name, Okeren Koko, we know, and it's been discussed here, and it was passed in the last Senate. Mr. President, I would suggest that those like my colleague, distinguished Senator Barrow, has said, that it be committed to the relevant committee so that legislative action can immediately be taken, so that it can be brought back, because it cannot be overemphasized the need for the Maritime University. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you. Is there anyone who's opposed to this bill? Let's do the prayers. I'll put the question. Those in favor that this bill be not read the second time, say aye. Aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Clerk of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, a bill for an act to establish the Nigerian Maritime University, Okeren Koko, Delta State, and for related matters 2020, second reading.
A bill for an act to repeal the Maritime Academy of Nigeria Act, Cap M3, Laws of the Federation of Nigeria 2004, and to establish the University of Maritime Studies. Oh, sorry, that's all right. A bill for an act to establish Nigeria Maritime University of Krepoko, Delta State, and for related matters to 2020, second reading taken, and referred to the Committee on Tertiary Institutions, third form, to report back within 4 weeks. Senate Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. My highly respected and distinguished colleagues, the second order of the day is the second reading of the Fiscal Responsibility Act 2007 Repeal and Reenactment Bill 2020. Distinguished senators may recall that the bill was read the first time in this chamber on Wednesday, 6 November 2019. Mr. President, you may wish to invite distinguished Senator Aishatu Dairo Ahmed to move the motion for the bill to be read the second time.
Senator Aishatu Ahmed, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues. Aishatu Dairo Ahmed Binani, representing Adamawa Central. I move that the bill to repeal and to reenact the Fiscal Responsibility Act be read for the second time. I so move. I should also move.
You may proceed, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, most distinguished colleagues, it is a great privilege to lead this debate on the general principles of the Bill for an Act to Repeal and to Reenact the Fiscal Responsibility Act 2007. This bill was first read on the floor of this Hollow Chamber on Wednesday, 6th November 2019. Mr. President, most distinguished colleagues, we all know that the present government effort to combat corruption and make the public service more efficient and effective has through various ways brought in reforms in the public finance management of the nation. The Fiscal Responsibility Act is one of the areas that need these reforms because it is very strategic in the fight against corruption. The main strategic objectives of the Act is to provide for prudent management of the nation's resources, ensure long-term macroeconomic stability of the national economy, secure greater accountability and transparency in fiscal operations within the medium-term fiscal policy framework, the establishment of the Fiscal Responsibility Commission to ensure the promotion and enforcement of the nation's economic objectives and for related matters, to ensure prudence and transparency in the management of financial resources of the state, to channel expenditure of the state towards provision of public goods, infrastructure, social and economic services, to premise government spending on a credible expenditure management framework. Having operated the Act for a decade, a number of issues are pertinent in assessing the effectiveness of implementation of the provisions of the Act and the Fiscal Responsibility Commission as its enforcer. There are observed deficiencies that render implementation and enforcement of the provisions of the Act too administrative, especially without clear-cut punitive measures. This is further compounded by the disposition of successive governments and agencies towards the Fiscal Responsibility Commission in the discharge of its function as spelled out in the FRA. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, it is paramount to note that the FRA is not only harbinger on good fiscal governance, it is also a potent preventive mechanism against corrupt practices. The Act aptly emphasizes procedural framework as well as limit its fiscal management. The cardinal principle of this bill, Mr. President, is the repeal and reenactment of the Fiscal Responsibility Act 2007 to provide such reviews and amendment that will reform the Commission. A brief history of the FRC. The FRA, which was signed into law in 2007, created the Fiscal Responsibility Commission, FRC, and was inaugurated 11 years ago on 3rd December 2008. The powers and functions of the Commission are contained in Sections 2 and 3 of the present Act, which empowers the Commission to enforce the provisions of the Act. Over the years, the FRA, which is not only the forerunner of good fiscal governance, but also a potent preventive mechanism against corrupt practices, has been statutorily limited and ignored by successive governments. Justification of the bill. There is the need to repeal and to reenact the existing because of the following. Functions and powers of FRC. The powers given to the Commission in Section 2, 3, and 7 of the present Act has a drawback in that the provisions lack direct prosecutorial power for the Commission. This has led to undesirable situations where agencies approach requests and directives on compliance with tardiness, knowing fully well that there will be no consequences. Insufficient funding of the Commission. Given the enormity of the functions of the Commission, there is need to adequately fund it and not dependent on budgetary allocation from a source that is at the apex of its monitoring activities. Medium-term expenditure framework, MTEF. The FRA provides extensive procedures on the introduction of MTEF in the budget process as part of public finance management reform. In order to make the MTEF more effective and serve its objective, there is the need to make public consultation mandatory and not discretionary by the Minister of Finance and Budget Planning, Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning. Additionally, there should be corporate debt limit clearly defined for the 3 tiers of government in the MTEF and the strategies for its reduction and sustainability alongside timelines for the preparation and approved of MTEF. Annual budget. This bill is necessary to ensure that this budget cycle remains January to December. Budget of government, budget of government, corporations and agencies to improve compliance to fiscal transparency and accountability. Amendment has been made for all corporations and agencies to prepare and submit detailed revenue and expenditure estimate akin to MTEF and annual budget to the Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning. Remittance of operating surplus. Remittance of operational surplus of 80% by government corporations and agencies to the Consolidated Revenue Fund is reinforced in Section 22 of the existing Act. There is need for the remittance to be made not later than 30 days after the end of the statutory deadline for publishing of annual audited financial statement. Enforcement of penalties. All categories of infringements of the FRA should face sanctions, includes payment of fines, prison sentence or both, and other punitive measures as may be ordered by the court. Direct prosecutorial power and sanctions for infringement will change the implementation and compliance with the FRA to ensure fiscal transparency and accountability in the management of the nation's resources. Establishment of Fiscal Responsibility Council. This bill will deepen implementation of FRA across the Federation through the establishment of a Fiscal Responsibility Council. Mr. President, my distinguished colleagues, I urge you to support this bill and give expeditious passage to repeal and to reenact the Fiscal Responsibility Act 2007 because it seeks to strengthen fiscal management across the Federation. At the same time, reposition the Fiscal Responsibility Commission to deliver its mandate. I so much. Thank you, Mr. President, my distinguished colleagues.
Thank you, Senator Ibukwe Amusu.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ibikunle Amusu, I represent Ogun Central. Let me first commend Senator Aisha Dairo for the introduction of this very important Bill Fiscal Responsibility Act for its repeal and reenactment. Mr. President, if we are going to get it right as a country, This Fiscal Responsibility Act will help us to deepen what I call our accountability, reducing corruption, and putting all our MDAs on their toes. Mr. President, in passing our budget, returning the budget to the cycle of January to December, a lot of the assumptions, inherent assumptions that was in that budget, a lot of them would depend on this Fiscal Responsibility Act. Mr. President, anything that will bring us to speed as to what best practices should be supported, particularly when it comes to our finances. Mr. President, hitherto, when you look at this Fiscal Responsibility Bill, there are a lot of gaps there. Needless for me to repeat all that she has said. Those gaps, with this repeal and reenactment, all those gaps will be sorted out. People will now know that there are consequences for their actions. When you just sit in one office in none of these MDAs and just do things that you know that ultimately, even when you did not follow procedures, nothing will happen to you. People will now know that they are going to be put on the spot and they are going to be punished when they do not follow due process. Mr. President, it will not matter how big our revenue is if it is not well managed, if we do not make sure that all our expenses, all our expenditure follow due process, such that we reduce waste, we reduce corruption, transparency will be entrenched, and accountability will be entrenched when we follow all these procedures. If you look at our MTF, all of the principal guidelines of MTF has been covered by this Fiscal Responsibility Bill. So, Mr. President, I will want to say that all of us, all my colleagues, I will want to plead with you that this is one of those bills that can help us achieve all the desired results that we wanted in the budget that has been passed. It will do two things for us. It will help us to increase, when we follow this, to increase our revenue. And it will help us, most importantly, to make sure that we get value for whatever expenditure that is being made. So, Mr. President, I want to join my colleagues to say that this bill should be read for the second time and should be appropriately be sent to the committee that is in charge of ensuring that this bill is finally passed. So, Mr. President, I second this bill, and in seconding it, I've advanced some of the things that made me to second it. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Senator Alero, please.
Thank you, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues. My name is Muhammad Adamu Alero. I represent Kebbi Central. Mr. President, I rise to support this very important bill because it is meant to cure all the deficiencies of the Fiscal Responsibility Act passed in 2007. Presently, as the Act is, the Commission lacks the capacity to enforce the Act. And what Senator Aisha did is to give the teeth to the Commission to enforce all the deficiencies, to enforce penalties where possible. Mr. President, it's a well-known fact that there is a lot of waste and corruption in the way budget is being prepared in this country. Deliberately, some MDAs don't even